From the John DeVita Broadcast Center, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another broadcast of Armchair Experts with Jim Leon and Rich Massaro on the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network on Wednesday, November the 25th, the year of our Lord, 2015. And now, here they are, live, in person, and waiting for Turkey Day, Jim and Rich.
At least he didn't call us two turkeys.
Yeah, knowing John, he might come up with something like that.
I know. Off and running again, Leon and Massaro with another edition of our Turkey Bowl.
I've got big news.
What's your big news?
Big news. In addition to John and Chris Zaflick, I think we may have another listener.
Oh my gosh, we're up to three.
Yeah, we're up to three. Ray Murphy, who I'm working with over at the Seep Center, told me that he's got it marked down. And Ray's the type of guy. It seems like he would follow through on this type of stuff. He said tomorrow at 10 o'clock, he's got it marked down, and he's going.
Well, unfortunately, we're 10:30.
Okay, 10:30, whatever it is. So he's not going to hear us at 10.
If you're going to plug the show,
I'll see him again right after this. So I'll tell him 10:30.
If you're going to plug the show,
I wanted to mention him since he's going to be one of our three listeners.
Oh my gosh! Yeah. I wonder how many I didn't go back and look last time and see how many listen to the Al Marks show. And once again, we have to thank Al for coming on and spending about an hour and a half with us. It was a fun day to talk Ridgewood football and coaching and all sorts of stuff.
I got a question. Why are we on at the bottom of the hour? Doctor
the Dials, why are we on at the bottom of the hour?
Because something to do with the morning report at the school.
Oh, so in other words, we're being preempted for Jim the Rose now. Our buddy.
Hey, Jim's a good guy.
Jim's a real good guy.
Jim's a good guy. I mean, it always is fun when we're in the press box during football season with Jim and Scott. And certainly that last game of the year was not was not an artistic broadcast, but by golly, we had fun.
It was very therapeutic. I mean, if laughter is good for you, we had a really therapeutic session there.
Yeah. John, you going to turn the clock on sitting here? Otherwise,
or are we just going to keep going on? Is this going to be like Groundhog Day?
This is going to be like Groundhog Day. I just want to get an idea.
Let's see, John. You know what? I'll tell you what. I think those long hours at the school are starting to get to John a little bit.
We had a long day. Well, John had a long day yesterday. Certainly with basketball. 1:30 to 10:30.
Yeah. Did they give you any overtime, John? Or is that on a weekly basis?
That's a no.
Did you see that expression on his face? That is a no.
Yeah, that was a no.
That's even more than no. That's like, don't even bring it up. I don't want to talk about it. So.
I was just trying to figure out why the game went so long. They obviously didn't start at 5:30 last night.
Yeah, I'm thinking maybe there were some traffic problems.
That first game must have started late because I got there at about little after 6:15 or so, and it was they hadn't even finished the first half.
Now is Parker? Is that Francis Parker?
Yeah.
Is that a private school?
Yeah.
Actually,
okay.
I think the first game started at 4:30.
No,
it couldn't have.
Couldn't have started.
Couldn't
at 4:30.
have. Couldn't have because that a high school game is not going to take 2.5 hours or more.
No. They probably started after 5:30.
They didn't get started at 5:30 then.
Somebody was probably delayed getting there. That's all. I don't know where. I mean, I know where Main East is. I don't know where
Francis Parker is on Clark Street, roughly Fullerton.
Oh well, then they probably had a big problem getting there. That's what it was. They probably were late getting there.
Okay, that's the reason.
So what are we going to talk about here, Jim?
I don't know.
We talked a little bit during the game last night. We talked a few things, but
you folks should have listened to us during the game last night.
Yeah, then you would have heard the show.
You would have heard the whole show. Now we're sitting here going, I don't know what we're going to talk about. I got to tell you one thing, though. I mean, a couple of things. College football, college coaching. I really think, and I think we know that I'm a Michigan State fan, thanks to my wife.
Mm-hmm.
boy, I got to give Mark D'Antonio credit for the coaching job he did over the weekend against Ohio State. Basically, when you come to a point where right before the game your quarterback is not going to start, and you wind up switching gears from a predominantly pass-oriented offense to a quarterback option.
That's really switching gears.
Man, that is really switch. That is really switching gears. And you had an offensive line that was really firing out. The fact that you had your center, who is very critical to the team, coming back now and is healthy, Jack Allen, probably a potential All-American. And the defensive line finally played like Michigan State defense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it was funny after the end. It sounded like in the Ohio State locker room they were eating each other.
Jim, a couple things. It's Connor Cook, right?
Connor Cook.
Connor Cook. What was the injury? How did he get injured
shoulder.
before the game?
He actually got hurt last week in the game, and we didn't have the game on. But I'm looking at the Twitter feed during the course of the game, and I'm seeing somebody tweet that says he says Cook just threw a pass. He's got nothing.
Well, did you ever think that maybe going back to the idea that Mark D'Antonio does a really good job as a coach, maybe they rope-a-dope to Ohio State and they're thinking that Cook was the quarterback and he never was.
That could be
for that game anyway.
That could be. Obviously, he had the alternative plan set during the week because it was going to be, well, we think he's ready. It'll be a game. It's day by day.
You just don't throw in a quarterback option type of offense or was it a quarterback option or triple option?
It was more of a triple option.
You don't plug that in at game time.
You don't plug that in at game time. No. They had to be working on that during the week with the idea that he was not going to be available.
Yeah.
Or with the potential that he was not going to be available.
I think you're right. I was going to ask you, was Nick Saban the coach right before D'Antonio there? Or who was?
No, it was somebody else, and I can't remember who it was.
I was going to say...
Saban was back around the mid-'90s.
Okay. Because I don't think Michigan State was doing all that well. And in a tough conference like that, especially when your in-state rival is Michigan... So your recruiting is critical, especially in the state.
Yeah.
For let's put it this way: the job that Mark D'Antonio has done, there's no question that he's an excellent coach because he came in. I'm not saying that he had the worst circumstances, but he didn't have the best either. And this program's been very solid for quite a few years, and it's in a really tough conference. So. Not easy to do. Ask Indiana or Purdue or
even the tough. It's in the tough division of a tough conference.
Yeah. So which is actually probably a good thing when you think about it.
Yeah. You're prepped and you're ready.
Yeah, no doubt about it.
For that. And they're in a position now where they're controlling their destiny. If they beat Penn State, no problem. They're going to the Big Ten title game against Iowa.
I have to ask
I got to tell you one thing: Kurt Ferenz really saved his job by going 11-0 this year.
I'll tell you what though, that whole thing with because we don't get much, Michigan State or Iowa news or any of the Big Ten schools outside of Illinois and Northwestern here.
And we'd rather not hear about Illinois.
Yeah, although Illinois has had a decent year, and they're actually saying that with what now as much and I want to get back to my thought here, but with as much negative publicity that as Beckman got, apparently whoever the next coach is going to have some talent to work with. So obviously he didn't do everything wrong. If they're saying that the next guy, whether it be Cubit or they go outside the school to get the next coach, they're saying there's some talent there for whoever the next coach is.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting to see who the AD is, who they hire as AD.
Yeah, I like I can't think of the man's name, but the interim AD. He made some comments in the paper the other day, which I think are correct. We're not saying that we're not going to rehire Bill Cubit, but at this point, we have a window of opportunity, and let's see who's out there. And the other interesting thing is regardless of how Illinois has gone over the past, say, 8 or 10 years, it's still a Big Ten job. And what he's saying is they already have some interesting people inquiring about the job.
Okay.
So it could end up to be, I don't see any reason. I don't understand why Illinois, football-wise,
Never
falls
been good.
flat on their face all the
Never
time.
been
They
good.
should be able to have a good program. I don't understand why they never do.
I've never understood that. You get the occasional year where everything seems to come together. Go back and look at Mike White. Didn't Ron Turner take him to the Rose Bowl one year?
Ron Turner might have. The guy.
I don't remember.
The pathetic thing is that still probably the most successful coach that they had in my memory was going back to was it Pete Elliott?
Pete Elliott.
But think about who Pete Elliott had that made him successful. Start out with Dick Butkus, Jim Grabowski, Greg Schumacher, all local talent.
Yeah.
I mean that he grabbed out of in that case the Chicago Public League. Mario Campanaro,
Mike Talaferro.
I don't know if Talaferro was.
I don't know if he was local or not, but I remember you brought up Coach Camp.
That's what I just said.
Yeah, when you brought up
Campanaro.
Coach Camp, I remember him telling us that one time he said, "Be sure to watch the Big Ten game, Big Ten history of the week." He said it's our game versus I can't remember who. He said there's a great shot of me on the sidelines holding the clipboard.
Well, Jim, doesn't it make sense to you that unless you're, say, Wyoming or something, or Idaho, where you don't have a big population in the state, doesn't it make sense to you, instead of bringing in hired guns, people from out of state, and obviously you got to bring some of those, but doesn't it make sense, say, in Illinois or Michigan State or whoever's case, Indiana, whoever you want to name, doesn't it make sense to bring in some homegrown guys, some of your core guys to be homegrown guys because they may have a built-in allegiance to the school, and then surround them, maybe, if you got to bring other guys in, surround them with people who are from, good players from outside the state.
Sure.
But, your core guys that, you want to, if there's anybody comparable to a Jim Grabowski in the state, you want to get that guy, right? I mean, don't you think?
Yeah.
Instead of letting him go someplace else. I mean, and I think that's where Illinois has fallen down. I mean, John Zook was a great recruiter, or Ron Zook. John Zook was a player years ago. Ron Zook was a great recruiter, but I don't know how well he did inside the state. I'm really not sure. I think that is, be honest, I think that's their goal. But what happens is the more they slide, the harder it is even to get the in-state guys.
And it's harder because I think you're going to need to look for a coach that has a name reputation to come in here. Tim Beckman was a who?
Well, yeah. Well, and you see what's happened. Mike Thomas had a very short tenure as the AD, and I think with reason, because I think was it you and I that were talking last night. I believe the Illini men's basketball team just dodged a bullet.
They won 82-79 over Chicago State.
Over Chicago State.
Now Chicago State isn't a bad ball club, but they shouldn't be running with a Big Ten team like that.
I totally agree. I mean, and I think Illinois has had a couple other close games with teams that they should be beating handily, and it's actually I think John Gross is a good coach, but it doesn't seem like it's getting done with the Illini here.
No, it's not happening. It's not happening with him. Now Chicago, this is actually down. Illinois is playing in a tournament
in Puerto Rico or something.
I don't remember because. No, never mind. That's the women.
Now, who's coaching at Illinois? I mean, Chicago. Is it Tracy Is Tracy Dildy the coach there now?
I think it is. I was thinking it was Chicago State playing DePaul in a tournament, but that's the girls. It's the girls. The Chicago State girls are playing DePaul tonight on campus at DePaul.
The Chicago papers don't give you as much news, obviously, as they used to, but I thought I had read somewhere where Tracy Dildy, if he is the coach, I think he may be.
I think he is.
Had brought in some Chicago Now, not Chicago State legends, but Chicago basketball legends, guys who played locally at places like DePaul. He might have brought in let's just say, a Mark Aguirre or somebody like that to try to, to help. I won't say help with the recruiting, but give the kids that he's trying to bring in there the idea, hey, there's some really good homegrown talent that didn't go out of state, that stayed here.
That stayed around
and
here.
And helped the local schools.
Yeah.
And which I think is a good way to approach things.
Yeah. Tracy was on Pat Kennedy's staff.
Okay, yeah.
That's
right.
That's the first time I remember him. Tracy was a nice guy from what I remember of him.
Now, let me go back to what I was going to mention to you before we got off on Illinois. And what made me think of this is you as you say, you're a Michigan State guy through your wife. One of the guys that I really follow because I really liked him. I believe he was I'm pretty sure I'm right on this. He was a 4-year guy at Michigan State. Was drafted in the pros. Is a really strong contributor with the world champion Warriors. Is Draymond Green. Mm-hmm. And what I was going to ask you last week or the week before, I read an article in the USA Today part of the Sun-Times Sports section about Harrison Smith, who played, I think, with Notre Dame and is now with the Vikings as a safety.
Mm-hmm.
And Harrison Smith is one of these guys who doesn't, yay for me type of guys, but he really lays the leather to you. He's been a solid player all through college and now in the pros. I would say guys like Harrison Smith, Draymond Green, did I say that right?
Draymond Green. Yeah.
Those are guys, I look for guys like that, their names in the paper, because obviously we're Bears and Bulls and Blackhawks and Cubs and Sox fans in the city and, the local schools, of course. But there are guys that you like, and, these guys are not Illinois guys or don't play for an Illinois team, but they're guys that you just like their style. You follow them and you root for them.
Yeah, and it's a great work ethic.
Yeah.
Green impressed me that way when he was playing at Michigan State, and it's come forward that way into the pros.
Yeah, I mean, he's a guy who I think if you would have talked to the so-called experts, they would have said, he's okay.
Nobody talked to us.
But Draymond Green, when I saw, I didn't see him play that often, but every time I saw him play, he impressed me. He was a team guy. He could have been. I'm sure that at Michigan State, maybe he could have scored more. He could have done whatever. He did everything. Mm-hmm. And he was devoted to the team. He's a guy who said, I'm not leaving early. I don't know if he had that opportunity, but he's a guy who stayed 4 years, which is really uncommon in basketball. And then it's even more uncommon. They have a 4-year guy who makes it in the pros.
Yeah.
And so I guess I was going to ask you, are there guys that are with various teams or local teams even that are your favorites that you watch out for, that you really like?
Basketball wise,
any
I got to get myself. You know what?
I'm hitting you with this on the fly. So.
I look at a guy like look at the line play at Michigan. Look at Jack Allen, the center.
Okay, there's a guy.
There's a guy, great performer. This is a guy who was out injured. In fact, I think he got hurt. The game we were up at, and that line floundered until he came back in the last couple of weeks, and it's working well.
That's exactly the type of thing.
Shalik Calhoun. There's another guy on the defensive side. They've got a couple of running backs that I think are going to be really good, and it was nice to see. The backup quarterback, and now I can't think of his name, but every quarterback sounds Tyler O'Connor. Mm-hmm. In fact, I think listening to the game on Saturday, Kirk Herbstreit referred to him as Connor O'Connor.
Kirk got a little tongue-tied there, huh?
I think he called him 1 point Connor O'Connor.
Okay. Well, yeah. Well, he's Hey, he had his game points, and he was thinking Connor Cook, and O'Connor came in and screwed him up.
I think they put the shot of Connor Cook on the sidelines with the headset on.
Jim, do you remember there was a book? I don't know if the library still has it, but I don't know what the title of it is. But it's all about the Notre Dame Michigan State game of 1966. And
the infamous 10-10 tie.
Obviously,
Parsegian played for the tie, right? Wasn't that it?
I think that's what he did. Although I think, as he tells it, and when you think about it, he had some solid thinking. He didn't know. This wasn't the era of even work. I mean, college kickers at that point for field goals were really iffy, and I don't know.
I don't remember
how
who
long
the kicker
the field goal was, which would have come into play. But I think his concern was that it didn't get blocked and maybe run back or put them in position, Michigan State being them, to either score by a field goal or touchdown. I think that was his main concern. But, they started naming names. And obviously, the guys who we would all remember, like Clint Jones and George Webster, who became good pros. But, you start talking about guys like Jimmy Ray, Bob Apisa, a guy that I remembered only after I reading the book, but was a huge player for MSU on defense, Charlie Thornhill, who was a rather undersized middle linebacker, but a fantastic college football player. And Bubba Smith was on that team.
Yeah.
And then on the
he
opposite,
passed away.
I don't know. I'm not sure. Not sure about that.
I might think it was somebody else.
I'm going off on the types of players that not everybody is going to be Bubba Smith or George Webster or Clint Jones, but those players who were very good players who contributed to that team, and were not pros, and there's a lot of guys like that out there.
Yeah,
I mean a ton of guys like that out there.
Yeah, I mean you look at. Bubba passed away in 2011.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I thought he did. Yeah. I mean, you look at guys on the field now, and you think this is as far as they're going to go.
Right. Yeah. Sure.
But you look at them and you look at the contributions they make, and they're absolutely proud to be there.
Oh, definitely.
I mean, I think of the guys that have played semi-pro football and no longer play, but are still extremely attached to the game.
Sure. Oh.
And they're absolutely proud that they played it.
Oh, definitely. I mean, you could say that about most high school players. Whatever. Did you ever meet Danny Santucci? Danny, who played our former classmate Pat's and good friend Pat Santucci's son.
No, I never have.
Danny obviously was an outstanding college player. Started at Notre Dame. Had some time in the pros. I think Danny was with 3 or 4 teams. I'm not even sure if Danny ever actually played in a professional game other than maybe exhibition, but he was on the roster, maybe practice squad roster of, I want to say 3 or 4 different teams in the course of the time he was in the NFL. And one day I happened to run into Pat, and Danny was with him. Really nice young guy who's now working at the college in South Bend.
Oh, okay.
And but I remember running into Pat just prior to the NFL draft in Danny's senior year. And Pat told me, he says, well, we're pretty sure he's going to get drafted. He told me what teams were interested. And the interesting part about that is I think the teams that were interested were not the teams, or the teams that Pat told me were interested was not the team that drafted him. Yeah. But he said, even at that, though, Rich, he says, this is fantastic because Danny wants to try it, but he's got like Fortune 500 companies, numerous ones, in contact with him because he was such a excellent student. And I'm like, wow, that is fantastic, Pat. But it's interesting. Last night I was telling you about my buddy Dave LeDuc, who played with Tommy Dorr and Glenn Grunwald on those East Leiden teams in basketball that were so good. And Glenn Grunwald is a guy, Jim, and if I told you this story, stop me. But when Glenn Grunwald went to University of Indiana to play for Bobby Knight, he had basically a catastrophic knee injury that really limited what he could do. He was a very good player.
He was a very good high school player.
That became just a, sort of an average player.
Right.
But Knight played him. I mean, he still was in the rotation as a sixth or seventh guy. Well, when it came time for him to graduate, he was drafted by the Celtics. And he got to training camp, and the Celtics came up, and they told him, and this was going back when they had maybe 10 rounds in the draft.
Back in those days.
So they told him, they said, well, here, Glenn, this is the deal. You're not going to make the team. We want you for the front office, because he was a very bright guy. But you know what? We also want you to be able to say that you played some professional basketball. So you're going to make it through the whole training camp season. So you're going to play in the exhibitions and whatnot. So you could say, I played professional basketball. And that's what they did. And at the end of his time, I don't know if he went into the Celtics front office or he went, but here's a guy, when you think about it, talk about making lemonade out of lemons or chicken soup out of that other thing. John's just chuckling.
John
Thank
chuckled.
God he didn't say it.
John chuckled. He reached for his phone. But
reached for a speed dial to the priest, but he didn't need it. But at any rate, here's a guy who goes on and I believe he was president of the Denver Nuggets. I think he was president of the New York Knicks. He was also the head of the Toronto Stock Exchange at one time. I think he might have been the president of also the Toronto Raptors.
okay.
So,
Not bad.
I guess
not a bad career.
Not a bad career. The lesson to be learned is, there's more to this whole deal than just the game. And if something should happen to you, what happened to Glenn, where he physically just was not going to be able to participate any further than, college, his knee was just not going to enable him to do the things that he could really do. He probably would have been a pro.
It was there was
get ready.
Yeah, there was another one like that I can speak to. Tyrone Corbin.
Okay,
was the same way. Ty, when he was in school, was taking high-level finance courses. And, in fact, I think when Ty got out of school, I think Ty might have gotten a real estate license, too. Because he thought, I don't know if I'm going to make it. I don't know how, and if I do, I don't know how long I'm going to last.
Sure.
Ty Corbin and Ty Corbin was fortunate. Ty had a long career as a player.
Yes, yeah.
Never a star, but always a guy that would be there when you need him. Had a long, probably 15 years.
Yeah, he had a long career. Yeah.
He's coached a couple of teams.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. He was a coach of the Jazz.
Jazz, and wound up as an interim coach somewhere else.
Yeah, I'm not sure where.
Kings, maybe. But he prepared for it.
Yeah, I think that the lesson is
and a really bright guy too.
You really need to do that. I remember Dave Wyatter had told me that he was friends with a guy who was a wide receiver with the Broncos when Elway was there as a player, and they had both gone to Wake Forest. Dave played football at Wake Forest, and I think he probably through his friend got a tryout with the Broncos. And Dave proceeded to tell me, he said, you know what, all of a sudden we're going through the exhibition games and I'm not being cut. And he goes, here I am, like a 5'10", 5'11", 185-pound defensive back. And he says, now we're going through, and they were playing 6 exhibitions at the time. He says, we're going through all these exhibitions and I'm still on the team.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, all of a sudden, he says, I make it through the last exhibition. He says, now it looks like I'm going to make the team.
Mm-hmm.
And he sat down and he told me, he says, I sat down and I thought about it. He says, well, wait a minute. I'm a small defensive back. He says, they're probably going to have me run down under kickoffs and break the wedge. And he goes, what am I going to do, last 2 years? And he says, maybe I'll cripple myself. So he walked out of camp and cut himself. And, there's that aspect of it to think of. I mean, how, even if you make it, how many guys, what did you say, or are you, who is it that always says the average lifespan of an NFL player is about three years.
Maybe that at the most.
Yeah.
Maybe 4.
And 3 years doesn't get you into the pension plan.
No.
Okay.
No.
I think it's 5 that does
It
it.
needs to be 5. Linemen have your linemen have a shorter lifespan.
Yeah. I mean, they get injuries. You know what? I think I could tell that age is kicking in a little bit, Jim, because I start to watch the games now, and I watch the pile-ups, and I'm watching these guys sort of get bent over in weird positions, or somebody will, hit the pile before the whistle blows, and I'm like, ouch, that hurts.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to wake up hurting in the morning from that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. Then you start to think, and you know what? I'm not one of these people who wants to see football go bye-bye, but you're thinking, man, that's a lot of a lot of pain there, bud.
You watch some of those, you see those slow motion things of some of these knee injuries and that.
Yeah.
And you just go, ah.
Yeah, I mean, that hurts.
Yeah, going back to Tyrone Corbin. Tyrone Corbin's going to be 53 years old the end of December.
Wow.
Good Lord. His pro career ran from 1985 to 2001. He played for San Antonio, Cleveland, Phoenix, Minnesota, Utah, Atlanta, Sacramento, Miami, back to Atlanta, back to Sacramento, and finished up with the Toronto Raptors. As a coach, he's coached. He was an assistant at Utah from 2004 to 2011. He was the head coach from 2011 to 2014. Sacramento hired him as an assistant in 2014, and he was the interim coach for Sacramento 2014-2015.
Oh, you're right on the money on the Kings, huh?
Yeah.
Good memory.
9.2 points per game in his career.
Well, Jim, who was the guy, and it's just happened in the last couple weeks, that they found dead in his vehicle in New York? He had played basketball with Kevin Garnett and Ronnie Fields.
Yeah, now I
Farragut.
forgot his name.
Can't think of his name, but here's a guy who was it Wright? Is it Mike Wright?
Mike Wright might have been it.
Mike Wright, I think
Might
that
have
was
been it.
And I don't know if they've solved it, but it was a crime, and it wasn't anything where I don't think he was involved with drugs, because people said he was a straight guy, so it could have been a robbery gone wrong or something like that. But here's a guy who came out of Farragut. I think he played. I want to say he played at Arizona State. He was drafted into the pros. A very short career here in the States. But then it listed maybe a half a dozen countries, probably Israel, France, and other countries that he played, Italy, that he played in Europe and other parts of the world, and made a really good living at it. So there's always that, too. I mean, if you really love the play, you love playing the game, and you're good, but you're maybe not good enough to be in the American professional leagues.
You have a good.
There are especially for a basketball player, there are other avenues.
Yeah, you can have a great career. Lamone Lampley.
Right?
Played overseas for a number of years.
Yeah.
His biggest complaint that we used to see when we used to see his grandpa at the game, we'd ask him how Moan was doing. He goes, "Oh, he's doing real well. He loves it over there. I think he was playing in Turkey, but he says he can't get a good cheeseburger over there."
Yeah, I would imagine. Yeah,
that was his biggest complaint.
He was looking for McDonald's, and I wouldn't even say that's. Well, no, I'm not going to knock McDonald's. I actually like McDonald's food. I just don't eat it a lot.
Yeah, but that was his big complaint. Let's take a break. We'll be back.
Okay.
You're listening to Armchair Experts from the John DeVita Broadcast Center on Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM Norwich and the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network on Wednesday, November the 25th, the year of our Lord, 2015, with Jim Leon and Rich Massaro. And this is Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM Norwich, Illinois. And now, waiting for that big turkey day to come, here they are once again, Jim and Rich.
The two big turkeys that we are.
There we are.
Yeah.
Jim,
okay, go ahead. Finish.
I was going to say, one of the things we had talked a little bit about last night. There's two things, but I'll since we're still in football season. Are you hearing something?
Yeah, I'm getting some crackling in.
Something.
I'm getting a little crackling in the headset, John. I don't know. I don't know how it's coming across.
That's all right. I mean, that's not going to stop us from doing anything. But at any rate,
nothing ever stops.
Nothing ever stops us. Okay, it's gone now. John,
man,
you're
magic.
You are something else, man. Look at the magic. You are the magic man. Is right.
You've got the touch. Yeah, there he goes. Yeah, here he is.
I was going to say we had talked about what a nice job that we thought that the Bears coaching staff is doing.
Yeah. I wanted to get into that because, you know what? You look at, they come out, they're well prepared.
Mm-hmm.
They're not a really very good ball club. If you get right,
they don't have a lot of studs.
They don't, and they've been dealing with a tremendous amount of injuries.
Yeah, a lot. Yeah.
I mean, there was that one week that the receivers Cutler had out there was the who's who of who's he.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah. Right.
And to be in the position they're in, and to be to the point where maybe I think their play calling was a little bit questionable on Sunday, especially on that 2-point conversion. I couldn't understand why they didn't at least try to run the ball on the 2-point conversion, at least when they scored late in the game to try to tie.
You mean pass the ball?
No, that why they didn't run the ball.
They did run the ball.
No, they passed, didn't they?
No, they ran it. They handed off to Langford.
They handed it off to Langford. Why didn't they pass it? Well, then it's still wrong. They should have passed. I'm thinking of another play, a question.
They were, interesting when you bring that up, though. They were talking a little bit about, whether Cutler could have maybe changed the play at the line and what actually caused the play to go wrong. And apparently a DB had come up and came off the edge, and I'm not going to point the finger at anybody because I don't remember who, but somebody didn't pick up.
Somebody didn't pick up. I almost
defender that was supposed to be picked up.
And I also think there was something in the line that somebody missed something.
Yeah,
because of that.
Now
I don't know if he checked off something at the line, but somebody missed something.
Yeah, interesting thing. What people don't because we lost the game, but another nice fourth quarter drive by the Bears to at least be in position to possibly tie, because they went, I want to say, 65 yards in a minute and some seconds and scored.
Moved nicely.
Moved well. So the other thing is what's nice is I'm thinking about this. Denver did really well on the ground. Obviously, because they didn't want to put Osweiler in the best position he could be in for when he had to perform, for him to succeed. But even though the Denver running backs had good games, Osweiler had a good game, our defense still minimized the damage, 17 points.
Yeah.
So they may have been giving up yards, but they didn't give up points.
Yeah.
I see our defense really just continuing to improve, and I think our offense is improving as well.
The offense is improving well too, and and I think it's kind of sad. This is probably going to be the only year that Adam Gase is going to be here.
No, he'll be here. I think he'll be here,
unless they promise him the Bears job when John Fox finally decides to step aside.
I think that may already be the case.
I would hope so, but I would not be surprised to see Adam Gase leave.
Although, Hal Barkush, who a lot of times has the inside scoop, had mentioned in his article in the paper either last week or the week before, don't expect to see Gase leave. And so I'm thinking...
I would be disappointed if he does.
Well, think about this. If you were Adam Gase, who was in the running for some head coaching jobs, including the Bears last year, why, unless you knew something that everybody else doesn't know, why would you go to from a situation, and I'm not sure if he had the option to stay in Denver or not, but why would you go to a situation that potentially may not be very good for your resume, the Bears OC job, unless you knew something like that something was going to open up for you down the road, maybe with that same team.
Yeah, that
because
could be.
this is not going to. I mean, in this case, the Bears have performed well, so it hasn't hurt his resume, but the potential was there for his resume to be hurt.
Yeah.
You know, because look at who's the guy that went from Seattle to Atlanta? Quinn.
Yeah.
Was he the defensive coordinator or offensive guy?
He was a coordinator, and I can't remember what side.
He was one of. I can't remember which side of the ball he was on.
Yeah.
And came in, looked like, boy, oh boy, he's got it because they win 6 in a row. Well, now they're 6-4, I think.
Yeah.
Or they won 5 in a row. Now they lost 4 out of their last 5.
Lost 4 out of their last 5, so now everybody's looking at him and thinking he's a bum.
But the point would be, it's not always, think about a guy like Dave Wannstedt, who, was a hot defensive coordinator coming out of Dallas. And I think we always talk about the talent evaluators in terms of players have to know what they're looking at. I think they also have to know a little something in determining if a hot coach is going to have success as a head coach, because that doesn't translate.
It doesn't necessarily translate.
Doesn't translate much at all if you think about it. How many times is a guy really a successful coach? I mean, when you look at
think about Dr. Death here over the last 2 years.
You look at Trestman, but Mike Patine was successful wherever he was at. He's doing nothing with Cleveland.
Yeah.
You've got and there's other people. Ken Wisenhunt has been in and out.
And think of a guy who was very successful as a coordinator, Romeo Crennel.
Romeo Crennel's another one.
Charlie
Weiss.
Charlie Weiss was.
Yeah.
You realize how much money Charlie Weiss is being paid by 2 schools not to coach?
Yeah, and rightfully so.
Yeah.
But I would say on the whole, and even when the media tends to be very skeptical, but when they're even praising the job that the coaches are doing, which is pretty rare, I'd say I would have to concur with what they're saying. I mean, I think from John. Now, here's another thing to think of. I know that people say, well, he should have taken the chip shot field goal. But I think Fox, at least the way I'm seeing him from, obviously from way outside looking in, is, does he want to win? Yeah. But I think he's also trying to, test the waters in some cases to see how his team reacts in certain ways. And so I think John Fox, does he know that, say if the Bears are a 7-3 team and in the playoff hunt, I think he's going to take that chip shot field goal there. But the Bears being 4-5 and a work in progress, I think he maybe wants to see what some people are going to do in certain situations, and so we're going to go for it on 4th.
Yeah, it's interesting too to watch. I think the players, I would suspect that locker room is pretty doggone solid.
I would say
with that. I know the media gets frustrated with Fox because when you talk to him, he
doesn't want to say anything.
He says nothing 17 different ways.
Right.
And I think some of it, that's the fun part, listening to him.
It really is the fun part.
Because you're listening to him going, what did he just say?
Well, do you remember, one of the things I love about Fox, though, is that early in the year there was some issues with the special teams. So they brought some guys in. Prosinski was one, and I think this guy Barrow that he had last year in Denver is another, and I want to say another linebacker. I want to say his name is Reynolds. They brought 2 or 3 guys in who were good special teams players, and I think that issue for the most part has gone away. But while that was going on, they were questioning. The media, being they, were questioning the special teams coordinator. And Fox's answer was sort of, well, you know what? I've seen him before. He's been successful. And I think he might have even been Fox's coordinator in Denver. He's been successful at other places. It basically is not an issue. Now, I'm paraphrasing, but that's what he said.
Yeah.
And they don't like that because they want somebody to blame right away.
They're looking for a fall guy.
Yeah.
And I mean, you had D. Camillus.
Right.
Here last year was an easy fall guy.
Sure, yeah.
And you had, what's his name, who was the defensive coordinator last year?
Turner. Yeah. Mel Turner.
Mel Turner, who's an easy fall guy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they had easy people to blame.
Sure.
Last year.
Yeah.
And you had a head coach who was just a boob.
Yeah. Well, that was a very dysfunctional situation.
So it was easy to find that, and this is what they're looking for now, and it's not there. It's not there. I wanted to go ahead.
I think I've heard people say, and these were just people that you have coffee with or whatever. Fox. I don't think he. Especially when they got off to a little bit of a rough start. Well, what is Fox? I mean, what does he know? How good of a coach is he? Look, he had the old story. He had Peyton Manning in Denver, but you look at John Fox's track record. He had some success in Carolina. He had good success in Denver. I think basically
just remember, John Fox had a Denver team go to the playoffs with Tim Tebow.
Yeah, well, I think there again. There's where I see one of the big strengths of John Fox. Whoever he's got, he tries to utilize them in the best way possible.
Right.
The other thing is, and this is a whole different subject, but like when the people say, like what you just said, well, he went to the playoffs with Tim Tebow, or then people say, well,
I meant that's a
I understand
that's a positive statement to take somebody like that. Yeah.
But then the flip side, he had Peyton Manning. Yeah. The reality is
he had an old Peyton Manning.
But that's not even the point I would make. They'll say, I've heard people say, well, Phil Jackson, he had to wait. He would only go to the Lakers because they had Kobe and Shaq. But do you realize you saw the way Kobe and Shaq ended? Actually,
dysfunctional.
Jackson had to put that situation together and made it work for like 3 years and with world championships. Michael Jordan was resistant to what Jackson wanted to do initially, and then Jackson got his confidence and he bought into it. So it's not always the easiest situation coming in. In fact, it might be harder in some ways if you have a lot of talent, because the talent doesn't always necessarily have to be on the same page, as they relate to each other.
Yeah.
And the other thing is you have to, when you do have big talent, you have sometimes big egos. And, sometimes somebody, for the whole thing to work, one of those big egos might have to take a step back and not be as big a star. Mm-hmm. And that is a situation that is a touchy one that a lot of people have to deal with.
Sure. Look at the dysfunctional locker room in Columbus this weekend.
In Columbus for
Ohio State after the game.
Well,
Elliott saying, "Well, this is going to be the last game I play here."
What's interesting about that? I haven't picked up on it. I know that Elliott had made some comments. I didn't know what they were, but I do think that Urban Meyer has run up against a situation that's, I don't care how good a coach you are, is difficult to deal with. He had a little bit of alleviated when who was the quarterback initially last year that got hurt.
Wait a minute. Barrett. No, Barrett's the quarterback now. Let's see. There was Barrett. There was Cardale Jones and Dog on it. Now I can't remember.
Yeah, whoever that guy was,
yeah,
who
he was
like
the wide receiver.
All everything is a wide receiver.
He was
now,
the wide receiver,
which thankfully happened, because I think that where the problem has come in, probably for the team, and it might not be anything that's on the surface, but it could be bubbling underneath for a lot of people, is when J.T. Barrett came in and did really well, and then he was out of the picture because of an injury, and Jones came in and did really well. Now you come back with 3 established quarterbacks, so you alleviate that situation a little bit with one of them changing positions, but you still have Braxton Miller, right?
And by the way, he only caught one pass on Saturday.
But I think there is a recipe there for some big problems. And no matter how you handle the situation, who should the quarterback be? And I think that Meyer exacerbated the situation when at the beginning of the year, I don't know if he was alternating them or giving them equal playing time. And then a few games went by, and he said, okay, Barrett's my guy now. But then I think there was a game where Barrett didn't play because he had a problem. He didn't have
He
a
was
DUI or something.
he had a
He was
DUI.
suspended.
He had a DUI and was suspended.
So Jones stepped back in.
Jones stepped back in.
So it's been a mess, really.
Yeah.
Think about it.
Yeah. Now you've got Jones saying, "Well, I'm leaving after this season,"
Which, in a way, you can't blame him.
but I look at him and say, "Well, you ain't going to be a first round draft pick.
No, and you know what? And
You
even
haven't
if-
proven yourself to show the talent to be
No,
a
no,
first
no,
round
not
draft
at all.
pick."
Not at all. You know
Yeah.
what? There's the other thing. Do the guys who are involved have a realistic idea of what they can do?
Yeah.
Or are they listening to other people, including the media, say, because I heard, I think we talked about this on the show, right after Jones played the national championship game, a lot of the media were, this guy could be is he going to be the quarterback? He could be a first-round draft choice. I saw the one game, and I'm not an expert, but he played a very good game. But I'm also going to tell you that based on one or two games, that means nothing.
That means nothing.
Anybody
Anybody who would take him on the basis of that would be foolish.
would be very foolish. So,
And I'm not. Do you think? I'm not sure if Ezekiel Elliott
is as good as what they say.
is as good as what they say.
Well, He look
may
at a
be.
guy who was the.
He probably blew his Heisman chance on Saturday.
Well, look at Fournette, who for weeks at least with the Sun-Times college football writer, he's the Heisman Trophy guy.
Right.
Then they play Alabama. He gets shut down. I don't
Alabama
know.
eats him alive.
Well, and how much can you blame the running back for that?
Yeah.
If you know what, I didn't see the whole Alabama game, but I did see a lot of it.
Yeah.
I mean, they were hitting Fournette in the hole. Where are you going to go? I don't care if your name is Gale Sayers, Walter Payton, Jimmy Brown. If they're nailing in the hole, there's only so much you can do.
You got nothing.
Yeah.
You got nothing.
So, the media are mostly goofs. And
Except for us.
Except
John,
for,
going. Except for us.
Except for us, of course.
Of course.
But
and they don't give us a media badge, so
we're
that's
totally
the reason.
they give us a media badge at
we get to
place.
we get to go to the auto show.
Yeah.
Yeah, we become media that day.
Yeah, and now Jim can't even use any pickup lines in the models anymore. Since he's married.
Yeah,
so.
well,
yeah.
you were the one that was working him more. Well, what are you doing while you're off here? Oh, come on, Massaro. That line game.
No, that was a genuine question. I didn't know. No idea. I had no illusions of coming back down and joining anybody for an evening or anything like that. But anyway, back to whatever the heck we were talking about.
Where were we?
No, we were, you get it's just like a successful player, successful coach, or team. Nobody's ever quite as good as they look, and nobody's ever quite as bad as they look, and that's really the reality.
That's really the reality.
So
they had to show something to get where they were.
Well, Jim, if you're a few years ago, I'm watching Alabama play when they had A.J. McCarron as the quarterback. And A.J. McCarron is playing. He's a backup in the pros, right? I mean, he's still. I think he's in the league.
I think so. He's somewhere. I can't remember.
But A.J. McCarron looked very good. They had a couple running backs whose names I can't give you. It doesn't mean they could be pros too, for all I know. But here they're going behind this fantastic offensive line, which I think the year that I'm talking about, 2 or 3 of those guys were drafted, and a couple of them were drafted high. So the backs look great because they're getting big holes and they're running free and easy a lot of times. McCarron's looking good because he's got time, but the line is really doing it for you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the hard thing to judge is how many great running backs have you seen in college that go to the pros and don't make it.
Right.
And then you start to think, well, okay, they're all good. I'm not saying they're not good, but these guys look fantastic because they were running like free out in the open most of the time.
Yeah.
And they had huge holes, and so you look very good when that happens,
yeah,
right?
you look, if I looked at a couple of plays on Saturday, I mean, a huge hole opened up.
Right.
and the guy took off, and you think, how often is that going to happen in the pros?
That doesn't happen very often in the pros at all. So it's a whole different game. It's a whole different
ball game.
When we watched Ridgewood football the last couple of years, one of the most impressive things that I saw is that Alex Rice this year, and then I can't remember who was because he was sort of in tandem with somebody the previous year, and it doesn't matter. I'm not going to search for a name. But both of those kids we had a play where it was just an up the gut play, and then they'd make a nice little subtle move to the opposite side and find some daylight, and it happened on numerous occasions. Now I'm not saying those guys have professional talent in any sense, but it's those types of subtle moves, I think, that are the key to a good running back in the pros. Not the guy who you could get your fourth string guy in college to run through those huge holes because he's obviously a talented guy as well. Mm-hmm. But, you and I could probably make 5 yards with a huge hole. Not much more than that because probably fall down after 5. But, the point being, if the hole's there and you're there with the hole, you're going to make some yards.
You're going to get something out of it.
Yeah.
You're going to get something out of it. A couple of points that was interesting I saw. And I heard this yesterday, just going back into talking about coaching. You realize that Les Miles is down at LSU is going to be fired this year. That the Booster Club is ponying up over $15 million to buy out the rest of his contract, and the man's record is 110-32 in 11 years.
But you know what? It's interesting.
But there's
you should
just
bring up Les Miles.
But there's one problem.
He never beats Alabama.
Lost 5 years in a row.
Yeah, I was going to say
lost 5 times in a row.
I was thinking. I'm glad you brought this up because we wouldn't normally talk about it, but because that's LSU and we're in Chicago. But I'm thinking after that Alabama game, I'm thinking Les Miles is really a successful coach, but I'm wondering if he's going to keep his job because he does not just Alabama, but it seems LSU is always in a position to do something. But they never quite get over the hump and win the game they need to win.
Right.
And after a while, somebody's going to – and you know what? LSU may be in a position where, you may not want to get what you pray for because if they do get rid of Les Miles, at least they know Les Miles, his teams are consistently winning. He's doing something right. Mm-hmm. It might be worth their while to sit back and think, you know what? It's going to happen for them, I think, eventually. I mean, it always does. You got
the boosters in control now, and the boosters are going to.
No, I'm not saying his job is going to be saved, but I'm going to say if you want to make an intelligent decision, you don't just jettison a coach that's what did you say his record is?
110-32.
You better do a lot of thinking before you do that, and I don't care how many important games didn't go your way. Eventually, those games are going to go your way, I think.
Sure.
Especially with a guy, but I also can understand where he would be in trouble because they're tired of in this case you said they lost to Alabama 5 years in a row.
5 times in a row. 5 games in a row.
So, I understand that part of it too, but I would caution the people who are making the decisions down there not to make them that rashly.
He's lost five straight to Nick Saban, starting with the 2012 BCS championship game shutout.
Well, here's the other thing, though, Jim. As good as and I watched that game. LSU's got a fine team, very good team. I'd say this: I've seen them play Alabama maybe 2 out of those 5 years that you're talking about. They're not as good as Alabama. No. That's simple as that. Alabama's a better team.
It's a better team, and I think the complaint against him is they've apparently, and I haven't really followed them that close, they've had some good wide receiver talent, and he just apparently doesn't utilize them very well.
Well, that may be. I don't know.
Who was the coach? Who was it at Ohio State that got fired because he couldn't beat Michigan? John Cooper.
Yeah.
Wasn't there somebody at Michigan who got fired because he couldn't beat Ohio State?
I'm sure there has been. I mean,
after Bo. Gary Moeller drank himself out of the job.
Yeah, Gary Moeller did okay coaching-wise. Then the next guy was another low-key guy.
Lloyd Carr.
But
he
Lloyd Carr
lasted a long time. I was thinking
Lloyd Carr lasted.
I was thinking it was Gary Moeller might have been in trouble because he couldn't beat He couldn't beat Ohio State, but then again, Gary Mueller just drank himself out of the job.
That's it. Oh, thanks, John.
Yeah.
Jim, before we go, there's one thing that I had mentioned to you yesterday, and I want to give you a little, it's not a quiz, a question. The Cubs obviously are going to be in the market for a pitcher or two.
Please don't let it be Jeff Samardzija.
I hope not. Jeez.
I don't understand why anybody would be interested in Jeff Samardzija.
Well,
unless you're looking for something a little bit better at the back end of your rotation.
Yeah, I was going to say maybe for the back end, or maybe if you now why they're going to throw all that kind of money at Jeff Samardzija, I don't know. And I'm going to say this again, and I've said this more than once on the show. I like Jeff Samardzija. I like it. He seems to be a likable guy. He goes out. He lets the criticism and whatnot roll off his back, which you have to do.
Good guy.
But he's not been a winning pitcher in the major leagues, so why is anybody going to throw the big money at him? I don't understand that. You got to be out of your mind. His track record doesn't warrant that.
Why did people throw the big money of that day for Floyd Bannister?
Yeah, there you go. You've said that before.
I've said that before. Jeff Samardzija is the Floyd Bannister of the millennium. For those who don't know, Floyd Bannister was a pitcher back in the 80s who always showed a great amount of potential, and the White Sox paid a lot of money to sign him for that 83 division winner. Mm-hmm. And he probably I think he had a good year then, but he never really was the star everyone expected.
He was usually around the 500 pitcher.
Right.
And I think he had a big reputation coming out of college. I think he was like an Arizona
Arizona State, I think.
Yeah.
But finish your question, since I digressed.
I am still would love to see. I thought it would have been a great trade at the deadline, and I still think would be a great trade probably for both teams. Jorge Soler to Atlanta for Julio Teheran.
That would be a good deal.
Very good deal, I think. So,
I think as far as who's going to be on the market, who's going to be moved, you have the potential for 3 players to be moved: Soler, Baez, and Castro. Although I think Castro is going to turn into a halfway decent second baseman.
Honestly, I
would hate to see him go.
I don't want to see either Baez or Castro go. Mm-hmm. And that's a total change of tune for me with Castro. But he did show a lot. Just his whole approach to losing his shortstop job, the way he adapted to playing another position, his whole attitude. I think you can't. To me, it would take a lot for you to hear me knock the guy ever again. Mm-hmm. I think he was a real pro and a real gentleman. But the guy, and again, I have nothing against him, but I don't think that he's what we need or what we want him to be. Is if you could get Teheran for Soler, I would do it.
Oh yeah. And I think Soler would like to play in a little bit warmer climate.
That would probably help him.
That would probably help him.
Yeah.
I found it interesting too, just talking about the other side of town, that the White Sox are shopping Avi Garcia.
That doesn't surprise me.
It doesn't. It doesn't really surprise me. I think I'm more surprised is he hasn't achieved the potential when you look at him.
Well, I think we've talked about this before on the show too, where I don't believe that if he was, I always go back to, I think it was Branch Rickey that used to say, trade him a year too early versus a year too late.
Sure.
But the other thing that the Dodgers, and when he was with the Cardinals, used to do on a consistent basis is they would bring a guy who was a successful minor leaguer up through the system, but they were smart enough to see, yes, is this guy going to be a pro? Yeah. But is he going to be maybe, I'm not going to say a star because not everybody's going to be a star that you keep, but is he going to be a good everyday player?
Which is really what you want.
Which is what you want.
Yeah.
And I don't believe that Detroit would give up, because everything I heard when they first brought him up, that he was their top prospect.
Yeah.
I don't believe, for what transpired, that 3-way trade, I don't believe you give up your top prospect in that situation.
Yeah. You begin to ask what.
So what did they see, or what did they not like that they gave him up like that?
Yeah. That's the same thing everybody says in the in the NFL when you pick up somebody from New England, and New England says nice things about him as he goes out of town, but then you start to say, well, if Belichick's getting rid of him, there must be something wrong with him.
Well, the other thing, though, you think of is that people get fooled the other way. Here's a very strong ethic. You have to be a smart player. You have to do the right things to play with a team like the Patriots. So you show up really well as a Patriot. That doesn't mean you're going to be showing up very well if you go to the Cleveland Browns.
No. Yeah.
Okay. You look stronger because you're around stronger people.
Right.
And I think that's what happens quite a bit.
I always remember when Andre Dawson was signed by the Cubs. Everyone says, "Oh my God, this is going to be great. This is going to be great." He's always hit well in Wrigley Field, and then when he started, remember, he just really didn't get off to a really good start. And I'm thinking, yeah, he always hit well in Wrigley Field because he was facing Cub pitching.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I've said that for. Well, I was talking with Jimmy Sunshine one day. And he's got two friends, one of them deceased now, that were two of the greatest 16-inch softball players ever, without a question, Willie Simpson and Al Check. And we were sort of on the subject you and I are on right now. And I said, if you put Willie Simpson and Al Check on a team of just average players, will they make that team better? Yeah, they will. But they probably, just two guys with 10 or 11 starting players, they're not going to necessarily make them champions.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's always that. There's that rare individual who can, by themselves, lift the whole team up. But basically, even your star players, I go back to Michael Jordan. I was lucky enough to see his first regular season NBA game. But he started with a team of guys that, had that been the four guys that he played with, or that had that team stayed intact through his whole career, he never would have seen the NBA championship.
Never would have seen anything, and Michael Jordan would have been a guy who averaged
a lot of points.
And didn't have anything.
Now, to his credit, he was a guy who wanted to win. So.
Yeah. So he made everyone around him better.
Mm-hmm.
He made everyone around him better. There was another thought I had that popped into my head and just left again.
Just left.
Man,
but we're past our time, my friend.
Yeah, I realize. John gives us the old, hey, go ahead, just keep talking. Well, we're beginning to run out of things to talk about, and since I had a thought in my mind and it left. No, I will tell you one thing, though. We want to mention our friend Stephanie Rybant, who opened up her new place on the 5040 West Montrose Avenue, Fanny's Cafe, Bakery, and Boutique.
Yeah, right.
And it's been very successful. And Rich and I were over there on the opening, for the grand opening, not this past weekend, but the weekend before. And on my way out the door, I asked Stephanie, I said, can we do a remote here? And she looked at me with this look like, well, you had to ask.
Yeah.
So
right,
I'm just letting you know, John, we got a remote coming up sometime. We'll figure out a date. And we're going over to 5040 West Montrose Avenue.
Yep. Montrose
and Milwaukee.
Yep. Jim.
Yeah, we'll figure out a date with Stephanie, and we'll set up in the front window and yammer away for about an hour or so.
I'd like to say this to it. Who knows? I mean, Steph will probably never hear this, but or maybe even anybody that knows her. But there's this person who, I'm not saying that I never knew anybody in my life that had a plan, but because I've gotten to know Stephanie pretty well, she's told me about her plan and worked her plan, and I don't think I've ever been as aware of somebody with a plan as she is, and she really does a great job. A lot of energy.
Yeah,
I don't know how she does it.
I don't know how she's doing it because we stopped over at the other place in the library on Saturday for lunch and spent some time talking to Peggy.
Mm-hmm.
And she was talking about the next location over near North Park.
Yeah, the chocolate shop.
Yeah. Yeah, and which would be a great location for her.
That would be an excellent location.
I would just be concerned she's trying to take on too much too fast.
But at the same time, Jim, I think I think it's a lesson that most of us never learn. I don't think you grow unless your reach exceeds your grasp.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is, I'm glad you brought up something that's more of a personal. Well, it's news, but it's more local news. I had mentioned on the on the game last night, and I want to mention on the broadcast that we. In the last month or so. And, I know there's probably other people from the Ridgewood family that are in this category, but these are the two people I know of. Rudy Wyatter, who was a classmate of ours, and a teammate of mine, passed
in October
from pancreatic cancer.
Right.
And then Joni Caponegro, whose husband John works for the village. Her kids, Jill and Johnny, are both Ridgewood grads, and her son-in-law Timmy Zorno is a friend of mine, and was a very good athlete at Ridgewood. Passed, and the wake was this past Saturday. So we just want to extend our condolences to those families.
We do, and it's a tough time of year when that happens. We had a whole string of them last year, starting around this time of year when. Within a span of a couple of weeks, Dana lost an uncle. Then Dana lost an aunt. The minister who married Dana and Luis, lost his granddaughter.
Mm-hmm.
And a classmate of ours from class of 70, right before Christmas, Claudia Davis, passed.
Oh yeah,
you were
having a rough time there.
That was a whole stretch. It was like one after another.
I'll tell you, I didn't realize. I remember when you showed me the picture. I vaguely remembered Claudia Davis, but that was one you were pretty broken up about. That one.
Yeah, it was very tough because that was a tough one because she died so suddenly, and it was a aneurysm, and basically she was gone before she hit the floor.
I guess that might be the best way to go.
That's the best way to go.
I think. I don't know for
sure.
They
kept her on a respirator to get her sister in from California, and I think her son lives in St. Louis. So, and I remembered Chris when he was a little guy. So that was tough.
Well,
but it's a tough time of year. Well, now that we brought everybody down
on that bright note,
on that bright note for everything, we give thanks for the people that are with us.
Definitely.
We give thanks for the people who are no longer with us but are looking down upon us and are always a part of our lives.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good recovery, I think.
Yeah, that is. That's a real good recovery.
Yeah,
I like it.
So it's Thanksgiving coming up tomorrow. Don't get confused. I'm talking about the day
tomorrow.
I'm talking about the day this thing this epic actually airs.
Yeah.
John's suddenly going, oh, God, I got to get the turkey defrosted.
There it is. That's what he was doing upstairs when we came in. Yeah.
I got to stop on the way home tonight. I got to pick up a ham because I think we're going to have Dana's mom over on Thursday, and I'm not screwing, just for the three of us, I'm not screwing around with anything.
I don't blame you there.
We're going to have a ham. I debated about maybe getting a turkey breast, but I think we're going to get a ham and make it simple. And knowing Betty, when we're done with that, she's going to look at us and go, so we're going to play cards?
Yeah, that's right. She's always looking to take your money, isn't she?
She's always looking for the pinochle game to start.
That's it. Man, a pinochle shark.
And it's always funny. The question will be asked repeatedly during the course of the game. What's Trump again? What's Trump again? And we do reach a point at some point during the game, at some hand during the game, we will look and go, what would you like it to be? Which means we forgot too. And we joke that it's nice now that we're Dana's mom turned 90. We're both getting older, and it's nice that we have something in common, because when you tell us something now, we forget it simultaneously.
There you go.
That's it. So let's wrap it up. Enjoy your holiday. We'll be back a couple of weeks with some more nonsense. And thanks for listening, and we will catch you pretty soon. We are out of here. We are Taillights.
Jim and Rich, before we take off, I just want to say on behalf of the John DeVita Broadcast Center and the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network, I want to wish you and your families a very happy Thanksgiving.
And the same to you.
Same to you, John.
And the same to you, John. Thank you for all you do.
Yes, appreciate it.
Don't say it enough, but thank you for all you do.
Definitely.
Thank you, gentlemen. You have been listening to Armchair Experts from the John DeVita Broadcast Center on Wednesday, November the 25th, the year of our Lord, 2015, on Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM Norwich and the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network with the WRHS FM sports announcers Jim Leon and Rich Massaro. This broadcast was directed by John DeVita, and our special thanks to radio station manager Kevin Zeflik of WRHS FM Norwich and the executive producer of Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network, Mr. John Chikanda. This broadcast was pre-recorded on Tuesday, November the 24th, the year of our Lord, 2015. Until next time, happy Thanksgiving to all you great listeners, and be safe. And this is Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM, Norwich, Illinois. Have a great day, friends.